All right, you guys, welcome to another All Nation Line video. I'm John. Today I'm going to discuss the assembly of a simple truck kit that I wanted to develop for my own modeling needs. And I started out with the side frames for a traction model. And this happens to represent a truck that was built by Brill, and MCB, which stands for Master Car Builders, is a reference that you would typically see with a lot of the equipment in the old days. And so there were a good number of trolleys and streetcars that utilized these, I think even some gas electrics in those days. And the issue here was the fact that these are die cast, and of course they have the standard small holes in the journals, which may work for some axles, but typically in my case, I drill them out for either our axles or to stick in a ball bearing. But the trouble with these is, how do you mount them? There's not really enough material in here to drill and tap for a bolster. The detail is quite nice, but it's shallow, so you don't have a lot of material to work with. And so I came up with a simplified idea of a truck using a couple of 3D printed parts, which we'll talk about today. So I wanted to be able to mount these side frames so that visually they looked realistic. And on a finished truck like this, basically they're going to get mounted to these end bars, and I typically would glue those in with CA or a little bit of JB quick weld. So that's the solution. But in the interim, if you were to get this kit from us, you'll see that we have a internal truck frame, and the bottom side here actually is the bottom. This is the top, and we have 3 different sizes of bolsters. We have a tall one like in this one, and we have a very low one depending on your car body and your coupler height. And so here's an example of the lower bolster mounted on the frame. And what we'll typically do, and I was anticipating on a higher frame putting a motor and some gearing in this to develop a powered truck for these side frames. That may come at a later date. But in order to get these non-powered trucks to work, we decided to use our axle bushings here, or bearings, and they typically snap into these holes. Sometimes I do use a little file to burnish the surface and then put a little drop of CA in there just to make sure they stay in place. And typically we will supply the axles and the wheels, so you would have to press the wheels on. And what you would do is press one wheel on the end of the axle and feed it through to the other side and press on the second wheel. So again, you can't press both wheels on because there's no way to feed them through here with these bearings. And so once that's done, then you can mount the end bars. Now we use a 080 screw to mount the bolster to the top of the frame. We use the 090s to tap the holes on the ends for the bars. And there's an option that you can consider when you build these as to whether or not you would like to leave the axles long, or in the case of this one, I've cut the axles flush with the wheel. And the reason I did that on this pair is I want a little more lateral movement in this truck frame. And the little pilot hole here can be drilled out for using a kingpin to mount it to your car body bolster. And the holes in the side frames, I typically drill them out a little bit, but they really don't serve a bearing purpose for the end on a long axle. But they would tend to keep less lateral movement once you mount these and glue these in place. So that's typically what you would have to go through to develop this set of trucks. And the kit comes with the pair, so you have two of them, and you have to determine what height bolster you would like for your particular model. Other than that, I think it visually is a pretty good looking truck, even though the internals is not representative of the actual prototype Brill truck, but we're mainly interested in a functional piece for our particular model. I hope you found this interesting. If you have any comments, please share them for other modelers, and the instructions for building these are on our website. And I think, like I said before, it's an enjoyable little project, particularly if you're into traction modeling.